Welcome to Blueprint Radio. I'm your host, Martin Williams. Here we help you create a blueprint for your life. So let's build. And welcome to Blueprint Radio. My name is Martin Williams. Don't forget to subscribe to the Blueprint Radio podcast by going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. All the links to the podcast can be found at guidedexpressions.com/podcast with an S, or wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. So today's episode is Fear is Choosing Failure. So there's a lot of content out there as it pertains to how to overcome your fears and how to move past your fears. And, there's a lot of coaches who help you, act in spite of your fears. And, you've heard the expression, feel the fear and do it anyway. It's actually a book. It's not just an expression. And all of it's valid. All of it is valid. And, much of it is effective. But what is fear really? And everyone has a different take on fear, and I'm no different. I think that fear is basically choosing to fail. And the reason that I believe that is that I believe that we live in a world where there's infinite possibilities. We live in a world that there are infinite outcomes available at our disposal. If choice was not a factor, then we wouldn't have a free will. We would just be robots, basically doing what we are told. And to a degree, I think that there are some people in our society that would like that to happen, because when you can control a person, you can control everything about them, right? But at our core, we were given a free will. At our core, we were given the ability to choose. So if you have an ability to choose, that means that you have an ability to choose right or choose wrong. You have an ability to choose success. You can choose failure. You can choose anything in between. You can choose mediocrity. You can choose to not do anything. You can choose to do it all. Or you can choose to do some things and leave other things alone. And somewhere in the middle is what's right for you. What's right for me is not 100% what's right for you. That's why there's no such thing as one size fits all advice. It doesn't work like that way. You can't make blanket statements of what works for one person would work for another. Is just not how life works. What works for my neighbor may not work for me, and vice versa. So we live in a world where, our individual nature demands us to choose. We have to choose. We have to make a choice. If you don't make a choice, that is a choice. Right? You're choosing not to choose, and by extension, you're choosing not to live. You're choosing not to experience life. When I say that, you're choosing not to experience all that life can be by not choosing. And most people don't choose out of fear. And what is the fear? The fear is of making the wrong decision, right? But when I say that fear is choosing failure, what you're basically doing is saying that when you're fearful, you're expecting it to not work. You're expecting it to fail. And in doing so, what a lot of people end up doing is fear shuts off action. So let's say that you're in business or you're a salesperson, and part of your job is connecting with people, calling people, emailing people, what have you. You've got to get out and talk to people about your product so they can buy it. Now, is that 100%? Is that a 100% thing? for every business. No, there's some people and some businesses that don't contact anyone. But for the most part, you have to make contact with the public if you want to sell your goods and services. So a lot of people are fearful of doing so. They're fearful of sending cold emails or making cold calls because they feel like they're going to fail. They feel like it's not going to work, right? So that failure expectation is a choice. You're choosing to expect failure. Now, that might mess with some people's mindset, but the bottom line is that if you thought that every call would turn into a sale, you'd be more apt to make the call. But most people are choosing failure. But why are we choosing failure? Why are we choosing that expectation? Why are we choosing that? And I think a lot of times, a lot of the reasons that people make wrong choices is because they didn't know that they had a choice. They didn't know that they had options. We have options. We can choose success. We can choose the expectation that it's going to work. We can choose that. We can choose to expect to win. We can choose to expect today will be a good day. I expect today will be a good day, even though it's a Monday, even though there's a lot of things going on, even though there's a lot of things that are on my plate that need to get done. I expect today to work. I expect today to be a good day, right? Worry is preparing the mind for inevitable failure. If you're worried that you're not going to be able to pay your bills this month, if you're worried about a health crisis, and I'm not belittling any of those things, if you're worried about a spouse leaving you, or worried about a child that has gone, on the wrong track, right? I'm not saying that any of those things are light things, but when you worry, you're worrying and expecting the worst. You're expecting something bad to happen. And what you're doing about worry, and one of the reasons why worry is so destructive, is that you're preparing the mind for failure. You're preparing the mind for the worst possible scenario, which is a very, very destructive thing to do. And you should really stop, right? You should really stop worrying. If for no other reason that the revelation is that you're hurting yourself by worry. We hurt ourselves when we worry. And, it's a bad habit, and some of us got it on us. Some of us were raised by people who worried incessantly, worried nonstop. But none of that gets you what you want. Okay? So when you understand worry is preparation for failure, and fear is the choice of failure, what do you have to do? You have to make a different choice, and you have to have a different expectation. I choose, right? From day to day, I choose to succeed. I choose to expect that when I call on these companies that they're going to want to work with me. I choose to expect that when I put out a course that people are going to buy it. I choose to expect that my health will be as good as it is right now, if not better. I choose to expect that my family and my marriage is going to stay in a good place. Now, does it mean that it's going to? No, it doesn't. But as you rewire your mind, you will rewire your actions. Okay? People who think differently do differently. When you begin to stop expecting failure, stop, being obsessed with the possibility of failure and start becoming obsessed with the possibility of success and start rewiring your mind in that way, you're going to act differently. You're going to do things differently. It's law. You can't act apart from your mind. Okay? Your mind is driving your actions. So if you want to change your actions, you have to change your mind. And the way you change your mind is that you have to give it different goals and different activities. Instead of worrying all the time, it's instead thinking about, well, what if this works? What happens when this works? What happens when, the people say yes, or, the offer is accepted on the house, or, whatever the thing is that you're going after. What happens if it works? What happens if I do end up being successful? Then what? That is how you got to think, right? Now, you can think however you want. You can do whatever you want. But I'm saying I never met a person who enjoyed worrying, right? I never met a person who enjoyed the activity of worry, because worry is draining. It's draining, right? I've never met a person that enjoyed it. So the alternative is to have a positive expectation, to expect to win, to expect to succeed. And in doing so, you're going to start changing your life in ways that you never thought possible. So thank you so much for listening to the Blueprint Radio podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to Blueprint Radio. For more information on Martin Williams coaching and products, please go to guidedexpressions.com or visit me on Facebook as well as Instagram.